I'd like now to introduce to you Thea Polancic. Thea Polancic is a passionate advocate for the power of business as a force for good in the world. She is the founder and executive director of the Chicago chapter of Conscious Capitalism, Inc. The Chicago chapter is the first in North America with almost 1,000 members. Under her leadership, the Chicago chapter produces programs for the general public and private events for senior executives who are committed to leading organizations that are both purpose-driven and highly profitable. Thea is on the advisory board of the newly launched Conscious Venture Lab in Columbia, Maryland, an accelerator for early-stage conscious capitalist and purpose-driven companies. As a mentor to the CVL and other accelerators, she gets to help early-stage entrepreneurs create businesses that are great from the start. Thea is a published author and sought-after speaker on leadership, organizational effectiveness, and business strategy. Please welcome Thea Polancic.
There are many problems in the world right now. Paris, Beirut, as we think about the people in Mali today, the Middle East, Africa, our hearts are with those people in areas of conflict, where starting something that matters is not really top of mind for them right now, where they don't have the luxury that we do of knowing that we're basically fine, and we're going to be basically fine for the rest of our lives, and that we'll be okay one way or the other. No matter how it unfolds, we'll land on our feet, we'll create what's next. We're in pretty good shape. And this was the realization that set me on my journey towards my purpose. So in 2008, it was about this time of the year, I had been running a company for about 6 years. I'd had my own company with 3 fabulous partners. We had fantastic clients. And it was about November. I was beginning to think about how we were going to wrap up the year. We were in the business of helping companies set strategic plans and goals, and we do that for ourselves. So thinking, how have we done on our goals, that we were going to spend some time at the end of the year reflecting, and then maybe celebrate a little bit, and then give some thought to the next year and create some more goals and go do the same thing again. And then next year about this time, we would do the same thing again, and we would get to wherever we were going to get to, and then we would evaluate where we got to, and then we would celebrate a little bit, and we'd create some more goals. And I began to get a sense that there was if I kept going like this, it could get a little boring for me. That being a successful business owner was not going to be interesting enough to keep me engaged, even though I'm in a business where I spend, aside from conscious capitalism, I spend a lot of my time being with leaders who are inspired and helping them get inspired. And even in that work, it can become repetitive over time. So I felt like it's time for me to begin to figure out what my purpose was. It's time. So this was about 2008, so I embarked on a process to begin to define my bigger context, bigger game to play for myself. And about that time, I read an article in a magazine that was called What is Enlightenment? And the article was called The Big Business of Saving the World. Now, you got to remember, 2008, 2009, people did not really think about business as saving the world. People thought about business as ruining the world at that point, that business was an impediment to trying to make a difference in the world. And think about what happened to the financial markets. Think about the opinions of the fallout of those bad decisions that were made by certain business leaders. So it was a little revolutionary for somebody to come out with a magazine, in this magazine that was all about spirituality and enlightenment, to have this whole article on will big business save the world. And so I was in there, I was reading this article, and I was on a year-long journey to look at what my gifts are, what inspires me, what kind of a difference do I want to make, and it was all a little confusing and overwhelming, to tell you the truth. And so I read this article, and what was surprising to me in it, there was specifically the author mentioned something that really surprised me, and it really stuck with me, that McDonald's is the largest employer of teenagers on the planet. So if you want to make a difference for teenagers, the fastest way to make that difference is to talk to McDonald's, potentially, rather than the other ways that we think of making global change, like creating a millennium goal and moving that through the United Nations that then gets rolled out to 150 countries. I mean, think about what it would take to try to make a difference in the lives of all of the teenagers on the planet, regardless of what country they're in, and how much faster that can happen by one decision made by McDonald's, which is the largest employer of young people, largest provider of opportunity for young people on the planet. So I was really struck by a few things in that. I was struck by, whatever you think about McDonald's, right? I was struck by the leverage that they have to make a difference. I was struck by the awesome opportunity that there is to make a difference. Companies like Pepsi and McDonald's and Unilever. And I was struck by the awesome responsibility that those businesses have to make a difference, to use that leverage for good. And so I realized that my purpose was actually in this area of business as a force for good. And I was frankly a little relieved, because I was a little concerned when I set out on this whole purpose journey that potentially my purpose was going to be in the area of like solving world hunger or education or, fresh water, things, just things that weren't necessarily, like they touched me, but they weren't the thing that inspired me. So I actually was a little relieved to find out that my purpose was in an area that already was inspiring to me. So that was the key that sort of unlocked purpose for me, and I framed my purpose as a promise. So my promise is that by the year 2030, business creates a world of beauty, prosperity, and happiness. And so I gave my word to that. I gave my word to it like a promise. And because that creates a certain amount of tension. When you commit to something, then it creates tension, like, okay, now I gotta go do something. It's not because I said, oh, I like this, or I care about this, but when I say I commit to this, all of a sudden, your butt's on the line. And so commitment aligns us, and it forces us to have to get into action. There is a great quote that by the Scottish explorer William H. Murray, who was part of a team that summited Mount Everest. And he says, until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never have otherwise occurred. Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. And so I committed, and I put my butt on the line. And so here I am, I've given my word that I'm creating this possibility for the entire planet, and then I proceeded to get overwhelmed for about 6 weeks. It's because it's like, what am I going to do? Who am I to give my word to something like this, to make this like a commitment and then say I'm going to impact the whole planet? Like, who am I? Nobody knows who I am. And so I got totally overwhelmed, and I did absolutely nothing for about 6 weeks, and then it struck me. I could probably start in Chicago. Like, I live here. There's probably enough to do in Chicago to make a difference. Things are not totally sorted out here. I can probably start in Chicago. So that eased up on the pressure a little bit. And my first step then was to begin, the next breakthrough for me was to get that I didn't have to have all the answers myself. And so I got a bunch of people together who I thought would care about the same thing I did. This is the launch party from 2009 that we had at my house. And I got together other leaders who I felt bought into my promise and my commitment to that business had to be a force for good in the world, that we have to use our leverage as business leaders to really not only maximize profit, but purpose as well. So I got some friends together. The guy I'm talking to over there on the right-hand side is the senior, that at that time was the senior vice president and head of economic research for the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. And we all I shared my promise, so I said, here's what I've committed to, And I gave them as much as I knew. And then I put on flip charts around my house, I put what the questions were that we didn't really know what the answers were. And the cool thing was I didn't even have to know what the questions were, because I asked a couple people, what do you think some of the questions are that we should put up? And then I got ideas for the questions. So we put all the things up on the wall that we didn't have answers to and gave people food and wine and gave them Post-it notes and markers. And so we said, you know, talk to each other. What do you think? And please, like, put your ideas up here. And one of the questions was, who else do you think should be involved? And what do you think is possible? And what do you think the first steps are? All the questions that we didn't have the answers to. And so it was a relief to get that all I needed to do was start the conversation, and that I could crowdsource the rest of it in a way. And that has, that's where we took off from. So we began to convene regular meetings in Chicago of leaders that we felt the same way, and we figured that our job was to spread this conversation about business as a force for good. So now, it's the real deal. So we found out about conscious capitalism in 2010 and began and actually took on being a formal chapter, the first chapter of the conscious capitalism movement in the world. And we now have more than 1,000 people who participate in our list and our events. We have more than 100 CEOs. We do events every other year from February to August. The global conference is here in Chicago. Leaders come in from all over the world to participate. And it's a recognition of what we're causing here in Chicago. Of all the places they could have it, they're having it here last year and this year. And so lying in my pajamas in bed, being overwhelmed, I never would have known that it could turn into this. In fact, I had no idea that this is where we would end up. But I started, as Blake says. I just started something. And then I kept getting more people involved. I didn't try to do it all by myself. Blake actually mentions conscious capitalism and starts something that matters. He says, conscious capitalism is about more than simply making money, although it's about that too. It's about creating a successful business that also connects supporters to something that matters to them and that has great impact in the world. As consumers, customers will want your product for the typical reasons, because it works better, because it's fashionable, because the price is competitive, because it's innovative. But as supporters, they also believe in what you're doing. They bought into your story because it taps into something real and they want to be part of it. So conscious capitalism is a movement that was started. In fact, I encountered Blake at one of the CEO summits for conscious capitalism. It's a movement that was started by John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, and he got together with other leaders who felt this way and began to gather them together, just like we were gathering people together in Chicago. So the heads of Southwest Airlines and Starbucks and Patagonia and the Container Store, these brands now that are beloved, very, very successful brands. And so conscious capitalism is about four things. First, that business has to have a higher purpose. So if you've been reading along with Blake, then a lot of these things are going to be familiar. First, so business has to have a higher reason for being than just making money. 85% of millennials will change jobs or change products based on identification with values or purpose. There was another study recently that 59% of millennials will avoid the aisles in the grocery store that they feel only contain products like by big names that don't care about the environment. So this is real. It's happening. It's not unicorns and rainbows. Unless a company has a purpose, they are no longer going to be competitive at a certain point. It's moving so fast into the mainstream that Ernst & Young has a purpose-driven leadership consulting practice. So you've got to have a greater purpose if you're really going to attract and retain the best talent. And to engage your stakeholders, Blake calls them supporters, to engage all of your stakeholders in the fulfillment of your purpose is the second piece. So having a stakeholder orientation. We say stakeholder, you create stakeholder value as opposed to shareholder value. So it used to be, people used to say the business of a business was to create value for the shareholders, the owners, the investors. Well, the problem is people are not, I don't know about you, but people are not generally that inspired by going to work and putting money in the pockets of the owners anymore. That is not inspiring in and of itself. And in this job market, people don't have to stick around. So it's no longer where I go to a job and I seek to stay there my whole life. I have to be there because I feel like I'm contributing to something that matters to me and because I feel like I'm making a difference. So a stakeholder orientation means that my stakeholders are my customers, my suppliers, the community, the investors and the owners, as well as the customer employees. And if I create value for all of those groups, and I engage all of them in being supporters or stakeholders in our purpose, then that creates something that's very, very powerful. And it also cannot be easily replicated by other businesses that are in your business. You know, today people can copy your website, they can copy your technology, they can copy your product, they can even try to take your employees from you. But what they can't do is if you have relationships with your stakeholders that are so powerful that your suppliers and your employers and your customers say to your competitors, we won't come and work for you. We don't want to do business with you because we care too much about what this company is doing. Nobody can copy that. So stakeholder value creation is the second part of conscious capitalism. The third part is having a conscious culture. What does that mean? It means that you have a value system that it's not enough to be, you can't be a jerk and be a high performer and stay. There are Paul Purcell, who's the CEO of Robert W. Baird, which is a competitor to Merrill Lynch. Baird is based in Milwaukee and Chicago. Paul is the chairman and the CEO. And we did an event at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, and Paul was on the panel there. And he said it in a little crustier term, so I won't say it exactly like this, but he said, we have a no jerk rule. And he said, if you are a jerk, you can't come and work for us. And we won't hire you. It doesn't make any difference how talented you are. And if somehow you make it through our hiring process and you're a jerk, we'll find you and we'll fire you. And so that's what it means to have a conscious culture, that we have values that aren't just on the walls of the conference rooms, but that they actually are clear. Like I know, teamwork doesn't just mean like we all go out and do rah-rah team building stuff. Teamwork means that if I'm sitting in the cafeteria and somebody walks in that I don't know and there's an empty seat, I'll invite them to sit with me. So that's a conscious culture. And then the last piece is conscious leadership, because it takes a very special kind of leader to be able to lead this kind of complexity. It's a lot easier to just make money for the investors than it is to actually balance the needs of all of your stakeholders and look out, somehow find a way to strike a balance between all of that. It takes a lot more complexity to be able to have the business model sense, because you still have to have a successful business, and be a feeler and be able to have a heart and connect with your stakeholders emotionally. So conscious leadership is the last piece of this. And one of the things I really love about what Blake is saying in Start Something That Matters is that he makes it very personal. You don't have to be, sometimes we can look at this and say, well, I'm not the person who runs a company. I'm not a leader in a company. I'm not even in a company at all. But he makes it very personal and challenges us to say, what does my conscious capitalism look like? What is my purpose? Who are my stakeholders? How am I doing at creating value for the stakeholders in my life? You know, my partners, my husband, my son, the people that I work with in conscious capitalism, the people my clients and the people that I interact with in my business. All those people are part of my stakeholders. How am I doing at connecting with them and engaging them in what matters to me? What are my personal values? And how am I doing at developing my own leadership? So what it really boils down to, though, and the thing that inspired me and I wanted to share with you today was, as I look at this, Start Something That Matters, it begs the question, well, matters to who? Like, how are you going to know, okay, I'm going to go start something that matters, but how do I know what to start? Like, what matters? And it starts with heart. So the heart of the matter is what we're going to talk about for the rest of our time together today. And the heart of the matter is your purpose. It's why are you here? What are you meant to accomplish? It doesn't make any difference how old you are or how much impact you have. What is it that inspires you? What are you operating from? What is your why, as Simon Sinek would say? Blake urges us to identify our passion. He says the more strongly you feel about what you do, the more likely you are to push yourself to be good at it and to find a way to make a success at it. And that is so true. It was true for me too, because over the past 7 years since I've been working on my purpose and my commitment and engaging other people in it, there are times where I'm more connected to the work of it and not so connected to my why, to the purpose. And I can tell you, being clear about why I'm doing what I'm doing and the difference that I see that it makes and why I'm so inspired and the leaders that whose lives we touch, when I'm connected with that, it actually makes it a lot easier when I'm sitting in my jammies with my computer at 11 o'clock at night, trying to figure out how to get MailChimp to format an email the way that I want it to so I can send out a newsletter to 1,000 people who I don't all know personally. So it's important to be clear about what our why is. So we're actually going to have you do a little bit of work on this too. So let's break it down. Purpose. What is your heart telling you? So we looked at what are the different, there's a lot of literature out there around purpose. And it feels like they fall into 3 main camps. The first camp are the gifts camp. So purpose is about what your gifts are. My purpose has to do with what am I talented at. The second camp is in this area of passion. So your purpose is about what you're passionate about, what inspires you, what lights you up. And then the third camp, there's this third camp that's all around service or impact or contribution. Like purpose is in the area of where you want to contribute in life, where you want to serve, and where you want to make a difference. So let's start with the gifts. So this is you. Each of you in your seat is a superhero with some sort of superpower. Your gifts, this is the part where it's like, you could think about it in terms of everybody tells me that I'm good at X, or people keep coming to me for Y. It's the thing that I naturally do, and you just have to put me in a box at the bottom of the ocean to try to get me to stop doing it because I'm just naturally good at it. And you may think that the thing you're naturally good at is not important enough, but it is. Because once I was talking to one of the people who was helping me with my purpose, and I said, you know, one of the things that I'm really good at is being kind of a diva, but I don't really think that qualifies. And she was like, are you kidding? That's a totally awesome gift to have. That's a complete contribution to people. So take a minute, and on the paper that you have, this is not about self-editing. Write down the first thing that comes to mind. Give yourself a couple of moments to do this. What are your gifts? Just what are you naturally good at? What do you know you're good at? Don't worry about whether you think it's right or it's important enough. What are you naturally good at? I can tell that we have some talented people out there because you're still writing. That's awesome. Okay, so next are passions. So what kinds of activities do you feel most fulfilled? What gives you the greatest sense of happiness in the world? What inspires you? What do you get really excited about? And now, if you have a hard time figuring out what your passions are, Bob Keegan he's the head of the Adult Development Department at Harvard University. He says we should think about BMW language if we're having a hard time thinking about what we care about. BMW stands for bitching, moaning, and whining. So behind the things that we complain about are usually the seeds of what we really care about. Right? If you think about the things you complain about, the things that really bug you, hidden inside of there is something that matters to you, that whatever it is in that moment is not being honored. So take a minute and just think about either, naturally, what naturally inspires you? What do you get passionate about? Or what do you complain about? And what does that tell you about what you're passionate about? Okay, great. And then the last piece is your contribution. So finish the sentence, I'm most happy when I'm helping others blank. I'm most happy when I'm helping others. I can see the wheels turning, it's awesome. So this is the contribution that you want to make, or you can also think of what's the impact I want to have on the world. Don't worry about whether you think you can, but if I could, what would I really want to impact? What's an issue, or what's the difference I would love to make? It doesn't make any difference if you feel like you know how to. Oftentimes our brain that is absorbed with knowing how to do things shuts out our great ideas and our inspiration. I was just watching, there's a show that's on TV now by Ron Howard, the director Ron Howard, called Breakthrough, and it's in its 4th week or something. And last week the show was about the brain and breakthroughs in brain technology. And what was really fascinating was they looked at the unconscious mind and the conscious mind and decision making, and what's the relationship between the two when we make a decision. And what they found was that our decisions are made by our unconscious mind. So if you think about your intuition, your gut, your feelings, our decisions are actually made by the unconscious part of our brain. And then about 7 seconds later, our conscious mind takes credit for them. So whenever that logical brain of yours says, I don't know how to do that, or that's a stupid idea, just tell it, thanks for sharing. It's not making the decisions anyway. Okay, so now we're going to play a game. So how many of you know what Mad Libs is? Do you remember Mad Libs? It was really cool. Mad Libs, you can still get them. I was surprised to see you could still get them. I got some for my son. I thought it was like the greatest thing. We used to play these in the car or on school trips, on buses. So it's this book, and then you fill in. It's got these sentences, and it says fill in a noun, and then fill in an adjective. And so you, with your friend, you ask them to fill in the blanks, and then you read back to them this thing that sounds just ridiculous and silly, and they're fun. And but the great thing about Mad Libs is that they were easy. You could do them with a partner, and you didn't have to overthink it. There was no way to get the right answer, and there's no way to get the wrong answer. So we're going to do purpose Mad Libs now. So for yourself, write down, so this is the sentence, my purpose. Now, so you use the work that you have done already, and you write down, my purpose is to use my gifts of blank. So pick anything you wrote down about your gifts to help blank. And it can be your passions, your lifetime goals, or your contribution. So use part A of your brainstorming in the first blank, and then any combination you want of the second 2 sets of answers that you have in the second blank. So for instance, this person here said, my purpose is to use my gifts of intelligence and heart to help business be a force for good in the world. That's actually part of mine. It could be, my purpose is to use my gifts of humor to bring joy to people's lives. There's nothing that is better or worse in this game. Okay, great. So now you're going to work with a partner. So wherever you got to is fine, and now you can have your partner. This is the other part of Mad Libs, is that you always had to have a partner. So now your partner can help you out. So we're going to give you 5 minutes and work with a partner. We have an even number of people in the room, so everybody get with your partner and make sure as a community that everyone has a partner, because this change is all about community. And with your partner, just share what you have and then get some feedback. And partners, as you're listening to each other, like say, boy, it sounds like you got really excited around that one thing. Or you may share something and your partner may say, I don't get that you're actually that excited about that, right? So partners, your job is to help each other get closer to what you think your purpose statement is. Go ahead and begin. Okay, come on back. Come on back. All right, you're going to have plenty of time. You've got the rest of your lives to get this straight. So mine keeps evolving over time. But I love I love how engaged you all are in your conversations about your purpose on a Friday afternoon. So we want to hear from everyone what you have. So this is not a contest. There are no grades. There is no right or wrong or better or worse. And whatever you have is awesome. We promise. And let's hold our applause, and we'll applaud for everybody at the tail end. Okay? So Amy's got a mic, and let's just start up at the front, if you can kind of run it, since we've got some big spaces here. All right, let's hear it. What have you got?
Okay, I might have misspelled something. My purpose is my gift of making new friends to feel more comfortable with themselves.
Awesome.
Thank you.
My gift is basically like critical thinking and problem solving.
Beautiful. Thank you.
My purpose is to use my gift of empathy to show people compassion in this world.
Beautiful. All right, let's keep going.
My purpose is books, poetry books. I'm a writer, and so I write books a lot. And right now, my books are sold by Amazon, Amazon.com. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
My purpose is to use my gift of teaching to help with world literacy.
Beautiful. Very clear.
My purpose is to use my gift of kindness and authenticity to help others feel listened to and valued.
Lovely.
My purpose is to use my gifts of science, intelligence, working with puzzles, and organizing to help people. I don't know how to phrase it, but I basically want to go into the criminal justice field and use those gifts to help bring closure, something like that, to people.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you for sticking with that.
Okay, I guess my gift or my purpose is to change things. I like changing things, and my contribution is that I want to achieve is to help students achieve their goals.
Beautiful.
Mine is a combination between Lydia and Amy. My purpose is to use my gifts of kindness and creativity to help create awareness about animals suffering and their rights.
Beautiful.
My purpose is to use my gift of making people feel good about themselves.
Beautiful. Okay, let's come over this way just 1 second, catch her, and then we'll go back that other way.
My purpose is to use my gifts of restorative justice knowledge to help resolve conflicts, homelessness, and issues surrounding teen pregnancy.
Oh, wow. Awesome. You just drop the mic and leave the room.
My purpose is to use my gift of poetry to help inspire people to live empowered lives.
More poetry. Nice.
My purpose is to use my gift of singing and helping others to help the world become a better place.
Nice. Beautiful. Okay, round of applause for everybody. Wow. Like, you didn't know all these really incredible people were in the room when you walked in the room, did you? And isn't it interesting, too, that purpose conversation resonates for all of us? It doesn't make any difference, like, what the differences are between us. Or, you can keep inventing a purpose or keep deepening your sense of purpose up until the very minute that you die, right? So you are used up and the challenge is for us to live a purposeful life from each day, to have that as an opportunity. You guys did a great job on that. Thank you. So really, now all there is for you to do is to get out there and give. Like, get out there and start being your purpose. And the beautiful thing about having your purpose is that nobody can stop you. And nobody has to give you permission. So you think back to the time, 2008, 2009, I had my purpose statement. I also was the owner of my own company, which was a consulting firm that sold to businesses. Now, think about what's going on in the economy in like 2009, 2010. Not a lot of businesses buying consulting services. My husband is a realtor. Also not a great job to be in 2010. So it was easy to wake up and be concerned about myself. Am I going to make it? Is everything going to be okay? How can I survive as a business leader? Just to have my focus be on myself all day long and my own anxiety and concern and fear. And there was so much freedom when I would remember, like, driving in my car, headed downtown to go to work. There was so much freedom to get, like, I can just be my purpose today. I don't have to make it as a business leader today. I can truly suck as a business leader today, and nobody can agree to meet with me or buy anything, and I may not get any new clients, and I may not be sure how the pieces are all going to fit together. But I could be my purpose with every single person I meet, and nobody can stop me. And that was so freeing, because it gave me a bigger context to live my life inside of than my own survival and focusing on myself. And then I had a lot of freedom, and it also opened up my creativity. So when I had one of those conversations with myself, I really began to think of, well, what would make a difference? What really would be most helpful right now to people? And what I realized was that instead of focusing on like, why won't companies buy things right now? I thought about, wow, people are going through a lot of stress right now. Like the people in the organizations who would normally be our clients are stressed out. They are having to let people go. They are incredibly, nobody's sleeping. There's a lot of guilt, a lot of despair. People don't want to go to work. Even the people who have jobs don't want to go to work because they feel guilty about the fact that they still have a job. And so what we did was that client that I was going to visit that day, I said, you know what? I would love to do a lunch meeting for all your clients, and I'll do it for free, just about stress and how to handle it. And it would just be a gift that you can give your clients. As I'll be the speaker and I'll just do it as a gift. And it's not business development for me. I don't need anything, but I think it would really make a difference in people's lives. And so I ended up doing 3 of those. Now, you may think that I'm going to say, and I got all kinds of business from it. I didn't get any business from it at all, except it made me feel good. And I knew that I had done a good job that day, and I had made a difference for people. And I was continuing to be positive and be out there. And my client was really grateful that I gave them the opportunity to look like a leader at a time where there wasn't a lot of leadership going on. So being able to be your purpose and not worry about yourself also opens up a lot of creativity about where you can contribute. People don't have to agree for you to come and make a difference for them either. If you're looking to work with businesses, find businesses or organizations that you care about, especially nonprofits are always open to receiving services. And what we did when we first started ClearSpace, my consulting firm, we didn't have any clients yet. And so what we did, we knew that what we did would make a big difference for the companies that we worked with, any organization. And so we just found the organizations that we cared most deeply about, and we said, we'll come and do this for you for free. It's a win-win for us. We get to keep honing our craft. We know it's going to make a difference for you. And then we just asked them to have a little bit of skin in the game. So we said, okay, it could be monetary. So we want you to have some commitment. So it can either be that you're willing to pay like a small fee for the work that we do, or if you're really delighted with the outcome, then we want to co-present to your board so that we get exposure to all your board members and you get to sing our praises about what great work we did for you. And we created a win-win. And that was a great way for us to stay engaged, not sitting at home waiting for somebody to agree to sign a contract. Out there, making a difference, totally inspired, meeting new people, and making, some of the organizations we worked with were awesome. Mercy Home for Boys and Girls, and Albany Park Community Center, the Museum of Contemporary Art, WTTW. And, some of those over time have been paying clients of ours too. But it was just being in touch with people and making a difference, made a difference for us every day. And it helps us hone our craft and then get how am I doing? Oh, I need to change a little bit the thing that I do so that I can be more effective at it, so I can make a bigger difference and be more aligned with the purpose that I'm living. So it's about just getting out there and make a difference. So a lot of people, from time to time, people will come to me and will say, I have the opportunity to visit with some people sometimes who are seeking jobs because friends have asked me if I would sit down with them. And a lot of times people will say, I say, well, what are you really passionate about? What do you want? And they say, well, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. People who are looking for a job oftentimes make the mistake of saying, here's all the stuff I could do. But it's so general that it's hard to really get what they're excited about. And companies don't need people who can do things. They need people who are passionate about something. If you are super duper passionate about what it is, the field or the niche or the part of their business that you have connected with, they are more likely to find a job for you. It may not even be the one that they listed because they need people who are engaged. Engagement is the name of the game now. Gallup did a poll that said that out of 100% of companies' employees, only 30% of them are highly or just normally engaged. And the other 70% are either completely neutral or totally actively disengaged and sabotaging the company while they're at work. So people need employees who are passionate and engaged. So I love this quote from Howard Thurman, the philosopher, who says, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive and then go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So you've got, this new awareness of your strengths and your passion and the unique gift that you are in the world. So really all there is for you to do is to get out there and go do it. You have all weekend to practice, and then you can go live on Monday if you want. But just don't ever doubt for 1 minute that you are the one. There's no one else that has your purpose and can fulfill on it the way that you do. And each of us must fulfill on our purpose in order for the whole thing to work. Each of us has our own unique special gift that we contribute. So to start something that matters. So the last quote that I'll leave you with is my favorite one. That's by Marianne Williamson. Maybe some of you have heard this before. She says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, talented, gorgeous, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. We are all meant to shine." Thank you. So I'm happy to take some questions if you guys have. We certainly have time for questions.
Thank you so much for speaking with us. I was really curious about the leadership component of your model of conscious capitalism. As you said, it's a special kind of person who can balance all of those stakeholders. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that. We have a number of students who study leadership. Is there someone you think about when you think about that leader, and why do you think about that person? Who is very successful in that capacity, and what do they do?
Yeah, there is an abbreviation that the State Department used to use for hotspots in the world that is VUCA, V-U-C-A, and it stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And they used to say that described parts of the world. I don't know about you, but that describes much of our lives now. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And so what we're getting, that this is the field of leadership now. It's no longer about what you know, it's about how you adapt and change to what you find out. The name of the game is now about agility and resilience. It's about being able to respond instead of react. We talk about responsibility, and many times we think that that's punitive, like you're going to be the responsible one, like I'm going to hold you accountable for the fact. It's like a bad thing to be the one who's accountable. And we say instead, what if it's the ability to respond effectively no matter what the situation is? So, there are a lot of leaders out there. One of the things that we say is that leaders get the organizations they deserve. So Bob Chapman just wrote a book with Raj Sisodia, who's one of the founders of the movement, called Building the Fully Human Organization. Bob is the CEO of Barry Wehmuller Companies, which is a huge multi-billion-dollar holding company, kind of like an ITW. And Bob says, our purpose at Barry Wehmuller Companies is to to make great people. And to do that, we sell machinery and consulting services. So they really get that leadership, that the purpose of a company is for the joint fulfillment of the purposes of all the people who choose to work there. And Bob feels that he has a personal responsibility to be the kind of leader who can provide that to the organization. So leadership as service is another big piece. The Robert Greenleaf's book about servant leadership. In Chicago, there is a company that's been on the best places to work for 4 times in a row Centro and their CEO, Sean Rigsecker, says something very similar. Our purpose is for all of our people to be fulfilled. And they're a marketing company. They're not a human development company. So we see more and more. Jean Pizzo is a member of our community here in Chicago, and she's the CEO of a sheet metal manufacturing company called Ace Metalcraft. And Jean herself, she does a lot of personal work, deep personal work herself, on her own emotional intelligence, her own awareness, and really views leadership's responsibility as one that makes life for the workers as easy as possible. Not like coddling people, but we had a very enlightening field trip to her facility, and she said that one of the things they realized was that one of their workers was consistently getting lower scores on what he did, on his work. He was showing up as in the red zone, like not producing enough, not hitting the targets. And instead of saying, oh, what is wrong with this guy? We need to go kind of like let him know that he's falling behind. What she said was, what we realized was that we had a process that was demoralizing a human being. That actually the way in which our manufacturing process was getting work to him was causing him to not be able to keep up. And that it was a process, like our responsibility is to not let our processes demoralize a human being. So it's just a complete paradigm shift. And there are thousands of leaders like that in Chicago. It's one of the reasons we're really passionate about conscious capitalism in Chicago, because you drive down any of these streets and you'll see all these little manufacturing facilities, first, second, third generation, making things that are super sexy like chicken nugget machines and machine tool stamping lubricants and other things like that. And they just feel like this is the right way to do business. And so it's very inspiring for us. We're very excited about the possibilities here.
Thank you so much for coming. You have been very, very inspiring and reminding me of my gifts, purpose, and my contribution to the world.
Awesome.
And with that, I would like for you to talk a little bit about human capital as it relates to community building.
Can you just add a little bit more specificity?
Well, one of the things that I'm going to contribute to this world is to help build up strong communities, Shaniqua and I, that support the purpose of restorative justice.
Yeah.
In order for us to be able to say to a judge or a prosecutor, hey, you can redirect this person to us. We need to be able to build up communities that are strong enough to sustain that alternative.
Yeah, got it. So you want to look at Peter Block's book, Community. And Peter Block is somebody who's been in this area of global change for a long time. And he really talks about the community as the unit of change. And so the way that I would put it is that what you're trying ultimately to do, this is the way that I was trained, is create a new conversation. And so you have to figure out, if you're creating a new conversation, like the conversation of business as a force for good, you have to first find out what is the prevailing conversation. What are the things that people literally say in the field that you're trying to impact? And what is the new thing that you're trying, the new mindset, the new possibility that you're trying to create? And then your job is to get as many people sharing that new language as possible. So there are probably words that in restorative justice that you don't want to hear anymore. And there are probably new words that you want people to use instead. So this was the impetus behind getting people to come to my house. At that very beginning was like, okay, I just have to get as many people singing the same song as possible. And so that becomes your community unit of change. And then you got to keep that dialogue alive. So it's like a little flame, and you have to keep blowing on it, because conversations disappear. If they're new conversations, they're very fragile, and they will dissipate because the old conversation is so powerful, and it's reinforced in the newspaper and on the news, and we buy into it and we repeat it to each other. So the community is a big piece of it, is about inviting people to participate, being clear about what you're inviting them into, and inviting them into a future that inspires them. Too often, I guess this is another big piece, is that too often we try to get people aligned around somebody's getting a raw deal. You know, like the whales it's terrible, the things that are happening to the whales. Let's all get together and, you know, because we're all angry about the plight of the whales, right? And what that does is it gets all the people who are angry to come and be part of your team. And if you want to hang around with a bunch of angry people, then you should do that. But all that does is get agreement around what's not working, and it's not a conversation for the vision that you're trying to create. So that's the last piece, is that when you begin to engage a community, you want to engage them, a group of people who are united around a possibility that inspires you, and be clear about what the possibility is as opposed to what the gripe is. If that's helpful. Thanks. I think we have time for one more. One more. Awesome.
I was really curious about the Conscious Venture Lab in Columbia that you were on the board. I was curious about just knowing some more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a need to be able to start companies that are like the Tom Shoes of the world, and for structures to be there to also provide capital for early stage companies, because it's very hard to get small business loans if you're starting out an early stage entrepreneurial organization. So the Conscious Venture Lab is what's called an accelerator or an incubator. They take a class of anywhere between 3 to 7 early stage companies. So one of them is Shea Radiance, and she is producing a skincare product that's made out of shea butter, and it is directly linked to the impact made for the women in the country where the shea butter is harvested, and the economic impact on them and their freedom from their environment, their situation. And it's a luxurious product that she's selling here in the United States too. So Shea Radiance was one of those first companies in the first class. They tend to take like a 6-month class, and basically they're downloading all the possible tools and frameworks that you would need as if you are launching a baby business, a new business, and trying to give you as much as possible up front. And so there are several of those in Chicago. This one is in Maryland, but in Chicago, another similar one is called Impact Engine. And Impact Engine also takes 1 class a year. They take 6 to 10 companies. It's a 6-month or 4-month program. And they do an open public demo day where after the 4 months of this super intensive experience, then the companies all get up and they do 10-minute pitches, and then they seek outside investment. So it's a way of launching fledgling companies that are great from the start, hooking them up with potential investors. Thanks. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me today.